This video is all about why cells are so tiny. So I've put this picture of New York City in here to show you guys that cities and cells actually aren't too different. You've got a lot of things moving around, you've got things being transported from point A to point B, and it's constantly in motion. So you can think cells are like little tiny cities that don't sleep, just like New York. So why cells are so small is because, like a city, it's really easy to get things around if everything is in the same close vicinity. So, if the grocery store is 10 minutes away, it's pretty easy to go and get your groceries and get home. It doesn't take as much energy to do that. But if the nearest grocery store to your house is an hour away, that's going to be kind of cumbersome. It's going to take way more time, way more energy. So cells are small because of one thing: it saves energy. The further you have to transport something, the longer and more energy it's going to take, which is not efficient at all. Let's take a look at another example. Moving goods costs ATP, which is your cellular energy currency. So let's look at two different cells. Cell A is much smaller than cell B, so getting materials across from one side of the cell to another, like maybe this little protein right here, getting it from outside the cell into the other side is going to take physically less space and time to happen. Also, in the endomembrane system, the Golgi and the Ruffy aren't going to be so far away that it takes forever for that protein to travel from the ER to the Golgi and then out of the cell, because the space between the organelles are going to decrease with a cell that's smaller. Cell B, on the other hand, is massive. A protein traveling from one side of cell B to the other is going to take a much longer distance at a much higher cost of energy than cell A. So cells are very efficient because they are small, and this is very important. This is why we are not multicellular organisms that have 10 really big cells. We are made up of trillions with a T, of a trillion cells. There's also a trend that the lower the amount of volume in comparison to the surface area means more efficient. So smaller cells like this one are going to have a much higher surface area to volume ratio than larger cells. And the more surface area to volume you have, the easier things are going to be able to transport in and out of our cell. So let's focus on calculating surface area first. The surface area of a cube is going to be 6a squared, or a squared, being 4 times 4 in this case, is going to be the area of one side. So since it has 6 sides, we multiply it by 6. So the surface area of our smaller cube with 4 centimeters is going to be just 6 times 16, which is 96. And that's really as simple as that. That's the surface area. So our surface area of our larger cube is going to be 6 times 64, which is going to be 384. The next step to finding our surface area to volume ratio is obviously going to be to find our volume. Volume is just equal to length times width times height. So let's calculate the volume for our smaller cell with a 4 centimeter side. Volume is going to be equal to 4 cubed in this case, or 4 times 4 times 4, since all the sides are the same. So that's going to be 4 times 4 is 16, 16 times 4 is 64. Let's take a look at our larger cube, which is going to be 8 cubed. That's going to be 8 times 8 times 8, which is 512. So you can see the difference between the volume. The amount of space in these cells is so huge. 512 versus 64. So let's find our ratio. To find the ratio of the surface area to volume, you just divide surface area divided by volume. So in this case, it's going to be 96 divided by 64, which is going to equal 1.5. The last part to find the ratio aspect of it is just you take the surface area divided by the volume and you just put that number to 1. And the way we write that, it would be 1.5 with a colon to 1. So let's take a look at our larger cell here. Surface area is obviously less than volume in this case, because the larger the cell, the greater the volume, which means way more space things have to travel in and out, which is why large cells, no bueno. So we're just going to divide 384 divided by 512, which is going to get us 70.75, sorry. So in this larger cell, you can see the ratio is 0.75 to 1, much smaller than our smaller cell. So the greater the surface area to volume ratio, the more efficient the cell is, and that is very important for you to remember, just because I may be asking you a question about that on the test or even the midterm. So I will always give you the formulas. I'll always tell you how to calculate volume, and I'll always tell you how to calculate the surface area. You just have to remember to divide surface area divided by volume to get the ratio values, and to know that the larger the surface area to volume, the more efficient the cell is.